Hey, welcome to Relove Guitars. Sam here, and my dad is on, what do they call this thing nowadays? It's Facebook Live, no, Facebook video, on the wall. And I was just showing him the different sounds that this James Tyler Variax makes, and I thought, well, I might as well put the camera on, since I was going to run through that anyway. That's a very good hair joke, Dad. My old pa, he's got a head of hair and he's bragging. Anyway, this the Variax, I've only ever seen the earlier version, but this is the JT69 version, and it's quite interesting. So you've got a kind of basic sound model on this knob down here, and then there's a 5-position switch, and I don't think that equates to the same positions on the guitar it's modelling. So for example, if you've got a Strat sound, that's in the neck position. It might be equivalent or as close as it can get to the normal switching. And then we have a Les Paul, and it simulates humbuckers. Which is very cool. And then it goes off into the special stuff with all manner of different things, and it goes into a sort of semi-acoustics and jazz sounding guitars, and it manages to deaden the sound so that the notes don't sustain as long.
Does Claire know you share that shed with a giant?
A giant?
I can see his toilet roll.
Toilet roll's always here. Yeah, kitchen roll is a bit of a sort of luxury. You know, we get gallons of it by the supermarket. Oh, and then there's acoustic, so you can get your 12-string. Resonator type. What's that?
It's a funny thing.
Right, Pops, I'm going to love you and leave you and get back on to recording a video, or carrying on setting this guitar up. So unless you want to stay around for the whole boring works, which I'm sure you don't. But for people who might watch what this needs, Peter's complaint about it. First of all, he doesn't like the look of the headstock and the design of it, so he thinks it's a great guitar, but design-wise, he's not thrilled by it. But he has a couple of slight bits of buzz around. I think it was the 19th fret. A couple of slightly dead notes up there, and he's concerned because his feeling is that it messes up the amount of pickup that these piezo things do that drive the amp models. So although I'm not as familiar with it as he is, I'll take his word for it, and what I'll aim to do is to level these frets as close as they can be, and I will be able to hear it taking out the 19th fret. Those slight zizzings up there, and then also the nut first fret actions aren't great on the nut, and although it's beautifully fitted, so I'll try and get the right string heights before I resort to removing it and replacing it. Although I do have some replacements, or a replacement, lined up here for possible use. But Yamaha do a very funny thing, and their nut is often a non-standard size. So let's just check this. We've got a 41.13 there, and wow, that's quite a bit wider. It's funny that, isn't it? Oh, they're giving it in inches. Brilliant. Fractions of an inch. Fantastic. Anyway, so yeah, I'll work with the existing nut unless I have to go for another one. But it's I've not found it easy at all to get replacement Yamaha nuts in the past, so we're kind of stuck with what we've got access to and having to modify it. Okay, so it's going to get a fret level, very careful, precise fret level. I might even change the papers on the rods for this. I've done a quick read off here. We've got from low to high on the first fret, we've got 0.35 on the low E, 0.35 on the A, 0.3 on the D, and then up to 0.45 on the G, B and top E strings. So that's kind of the opposite way than you'd possibly imagine if there was going to be a stagger. It's the wrong way around. So I really want to take them all down to the same as the bottom two. Well, we can't really, D's already at 0.3, but 0.35 for the top three, because this will be making these a little harder to play up here, harder than they need to be. And then once I've got those correct, the string action at the height at the last fret is already 1.6 on the low E and 1.2 on the high E, which happens to be just about as low as you're going to get on a guitar of any kind, let alone this one. There is on the balance of the strings, they are biased towards the bass side, so, or should I say, the high E has got all the room on here, and it could be readjusted, but actually I think it's probably a sensible player's setting, so I'm not going to, because it's come that way, I'm not going to change it. It gives you more room for your lead guitar work without the string falling off the edge. But being a bolt-on neck, if that didn't suit you, that could be adjusted for dead center alignment. But like I say, I don't think it's a good idea to make any adjustment there. So there's not a lot to do with this other than that careful precision fret level. So before, yes, before anything else,
I can detect the sense of relief.
the sense of, yeah, you're right. With the sunshine outside and the hammock calling, yeah. Just for my dad, while you're there, Pa, I'll show you the progress of my John Lennon lookalike headless guitar. It's now in the stage where I've got some filler and primer, and I'm going to prime the wooden body here, and then I'm going to get the colours onto it, black colour and then a clear coat on top. So
is it to keep or something?
well, my story to myself is going to be a keeper right now, but truth is I probably should sell it, but I may like it too much for that, you know. Anyway, so that's yeah, that's what I got to get on with. And there's a whole bunch of other things on the way down here. A couple of other guitars. Here's a left-hand one for a special customer, so it will be played that way around. And this is one of my Trekkie shaped guitars, like a little travelling guitar, and it's a headless.
As they say, you sort of broke my dream. A dream of about 2 weeks ago now.
Well, now careful, Pa. You're on camera on YouTube.
Somebody playing a guitar.
Yeah.
And he was playing the wrong side.
Ah.
Not on the fret, he was playing the other side.
Okay. And here's a one in progress before it's got cut out. So there's a sort of block of resalvaged or reclaimed timber, but there's the bass part of it on the other side. Ready.
Could well have been a reflective table.
It could have been. In fact, this was a power station. This stuff used to be somewhere in the cooling towers, holding something up in there. So, but I mean, the comparison between the.
It's already seen good service.
Oh yeah, that's what I like about it. But this is an unusual wood, and I've got a few of my own guitars, and I've sold quite a lot of these type of guitars with this timber on it. It's going to be carved when this is cut to shape. It's going to be carved.
It's sort of different enough, isn't it?
Yeah, but it's very, very hard. So carving this is a labour of love. Whereas on this one, for the other customer, the wood on the top here is a African mahogany, which is much softer. So this will be a pleasure to carve into shape. This one, as you can tell by the difference in weight, this one's going to be a much harder thing. But they look beautiful when they're done. So that's how it goes. Right, Pa, I got to get on, so I will say goodbye to you, and I'll speak to you later on.
Yeah, okay.
All right. Take care. Bye bye. Okay. Rate the quality of that call. Of course it was great. Okay, busy charging up that phone. Okay, so family stuff aside for a minute. So that's what we're going to do. But I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare my tools before we go any further. Not long did this, so that the paper on here is not very worn at all. Oh, I rescued one from somewhere else the other day. This is I was tempted to do this, put this into action, into service. This is a part of the, well, this is the truss rod that came out of that warmoth neck that I put in the fire. To be honest, I'm not sure I would trust myself to use it, because it's well, it's untested, so I won't do this on Peter's guitar. There are other things I've got in my arsenal. Where have they gone now? There's a short one. This is Victor's special tools. I won't use those out of the blue, and of course, I just for a bit of fun, there's the original bad boy that started all of this. Look at that, hasn't been used in the whole time since it became impossible to use it, but it's the original thing that does the thing, and there's no reason why I shouldn't use it, except I don't want to feature this on my videos, so I use my own. That's how it goes. Up here there is also Victor's bar that he made, which is an interesting interpretation of the whole thing. I mean, what a great little handle and everything. And Victor made this and asked me to test it for him. And actually I never did, because the problem with this bar is that with your strings under load, this bar would bend to the shape of your neck, which is cool. I mean, you'd get a kind of fret level. But there are a lot of the time what I want this bar to do is keep its shape. Now this is being flat to begin with. This is going to bend to the curve, do the job, and get you probably a good level, and then spring back. But like I say, there are times when I need an active curve on here to cut into a flatter radius on the actual neck itself, and that often is, or that usually is why what this tool does, and the katana, I would have to say, it's what this tool does when used on a Les Paul, where you have a kind of hump in the neck, and with this in a fixed curve, it gently takes down the obstructive part of the hump. This, in truth, wouldn't do that. It would kind of try and mold itself to both the shapes. And although it's a nice object, I never really tested it because I don't see an application where it would work for me. Now, this has got pretty good quality paper on it. This one's probably been used a bit more, so I'll replace this one for this job on Peter's Variax. It's funny because I get quite nervous when I get a guitar in that doesn't require much. Now that sounds a silly thing to say, but when a customer brings a guitar and says, I can't get on with this, or this isn't working for me, and I will pick it up, test it out, and then find that from where I stand, it's, to all intents and purposes, it's in good shape. And then, as I say, I get nervous because I'm thinking to myself, is it improvable? And one of the things that it's hard to know is exactly what somebody wants or expects or thinks is possible. So with I more and more will spend more and more time these days playing the guitar and trying it out and seeing if I can get a real sense of what it is about this guitar that may not be working. I mean, of course I've got the notes and conversation that we've had in the first place, but I also then try to get as full of a sense of it myself as possible. And with this Variax, the only thing I could find was the tiny bit of where's my papers gone? Damn it! Oh, this is annoying. Where have my papers gone? Hellfire. That's weird. Somewhere up here. Here they are. Hidden. Yes, with this Variax, straight away it was okay. I can see, I can feel that little congestion that he's talking about right up there on the 19th or so fret. But apart from that, I really couldn't find a lot wrong with it. So the truth is, I can only do what's possible. So I will give it my very best shot with very careful fret leveling to clear up that tiny area of buzz. And beyond that, whoops, there you go, the ruler moves. Beyond that, get the first fret action right so that there's a feeling of a little bit easier to play. Which getting the first fret action is always good for that. But there's not a lot more than that I can do. And if the result is that Peter doesn't get what he feels is the right amount of sustain transfer through to the piezo pickups, then that's going to be just part of the limitation of the guitar, I'm afraid. It's an odd technical meets instrument, stringed instrument. Compromise isn't quite the right word, but it is an unusual combination of things, circuitry and synthesizer-ness. Anyway, so what I'm just going to do here is drop my new paper on here, and then we'll cut short. Now this truss rod is sort of my old trusty, I think it's about 41 millimeters, and I made an amendment to my ebook last month based on the years of using this and other truss rods, because I realised that this is a better length for me than the original one I'd started out using, which was 46 centimeters. So I've kind of modified or amended the recommendation, but I have to say loads of people have used the 46 centimeter one and got great results, so it's not a showstopper by any means. Okay, so I usually change this every 20 or 30 fret levels. It doesn't clog up very much, but now we have it with beautiful new sandpaper on. So this obviously increases its the amount it cuts, so we have to be careful that we don't, we're not overdoing it. So like I said, an area that we know a couple of clogs there. The relief is about 0.15, which is quite flat, but not impossibly flat. Now, first thing I'm going to do here is get this, we'll get the nut slots right. Now, the thing about these nut slots is they're already relatively deep, and what I will never do, and I don't want to do on any guitar, is go further into the slot with the exact file, because that just creates a tight, straight-walled slot, right? What we need on this guitar, it's become a habit. Look, I've changed my ways thanks to a piece of feedback from somebody on YouTube. Here's how I changed my ways. I add a precautionary piece of tape either side for this purpose here. Ready? There you go. So what I have learned, of course, this is right. floating. Yes, so I have a precautionary bit of tape here to save the edge of the neck. So what I prefer to do is I prefer to use a notch V file to take this down. Now the point being is everything above where the string is sitting in any kind of slot is surplus, right? So the fact that we've got about 1 millimeter of depth here is kind of very precise looking, but it's not needed. It doesn't serve any purpose. What's most important is we get this down to the correct action. Now let's get our little file, our little V file. So I know that I want to get this down from, where is it now? The G is 0.45 and I want it down to 0.30, playing itself. Okay, so what I'm looking out for is to see how much it has to go down. Okay, and you could go into the slot if it's clear enough. Let's see what it looks like. 16, 12, 24. Get the sharp bit. See, even that feels tight. Now I'm going to do what's sensible. I'm going to gently just open this slot. And what we can do is, once that's done and we're at the right height, we can always take off unwanted material and tidy it up. So this is what I recommend, is to cut it with a slightly backward facing V slot until you get the height you want, and then round out, just about there now, and round out with a suitable width file like this. That will ensure that the shape at the bottom is appropriate. Just on the mark, 0.3. Then we come back in with this one, and you can see, I can see the difference in the height visually from here. So we're going to do the same here, back to 0.3, and that's because the lowest of all of these is 0.3. So again, we'll do the same here. So this is a matter of just opening up the existing slot, tilting backwards. Pretty much on the mark straight away. And then again, just round out with appropriate file. Now, in my ebook, I show how to do this, not with these expensive to buy set of Japanese nut files, but I show how to do it with those little welding nozzle cleaner things, which makes it affordable. So a little bit here too. So some people might be purists about the kind of look of a machine finished nut slot, but I have to say my concern is the correct action first and foremost. The way it looks is second rank of importance. Okay, we're just about on the mark there. Yep, and we'll just a little bit of the 12 file, and then we're tilting backwards all the time to get the right angle. Okay, it's interesting, there's no string trees here. There you go, there's the top three adjusted. What we've got, 30, 35, 35. I think I would be tempted to leave those as they are, the bottom three. Okay. Okay, so let's just get the tuning right again. We are floating. Okay, so they're all now a better height, and like I say, if we want to, once we've done the fret leveling, we can file back the top of this nut so that the V aspect of it is less visible. If that bothers you, that's what you can do. From my perspective, as long as it's at the right height and it plays well, that's my primary interest. So now the next thing to do is, we've got the last fret action as good as it should be on this guitar. Now I'm going to go along and just hold these out of the way for a second and just mark up the frets with black marker Sharpie. I shouldn't have put those bits of tape away. I could use them now. Come back again. Brilliant. let's just put that there. Pinging all over the place. Yeah. So we're marking up the frets to do the fret leveling, and it's kind of easier with the strings all off to mark this up, but when you're starting with these strings on, and these are going to be sacrificial strings, as in we'll throw them away once the leveling's done. Shift this across to this side, protect it. Can't quite get to all of it, but yeah, so you just have to kind of push things to one side, and usually get them all done in 3 passes. Yeah, so there's not, like I say, this is a very minor adjustment possible on here. There's nothing that leapt out at me and said, this is going to be a problem, which is in some ways more confidence inspiring for me, because it's an immediate win. I can see what I can improve. Something like this, it's a mixture of very small improvements in a context of quite a high customer standard or expectation, so it's quite challenging in that respect. Okay, there's our guitar almost in tune, near enough. So now we get the truss rod adjusters, and we get the neck center on the pad on the stand, which has been appended. I found out the very hard way the other day that this had run out of its padding, and I was hammering in some frets and ended up making some dents on the underside of a neck, which I've had to kind of refinish and build up, and it's taken me a couple of days. Okay, so this is pretty much spot on already for the first fret. Okay, and again I will use my little bit of temporary sticky tape just to move that out of the way. That's all I want, is just push that string out of the way. So the first thing I'm going to do now is, under gravity with this new sandpaper, I'm going to run the tool up and down, side to side, on what I call the E track. Okay, and it'll show up fairly quickly where it thinks the uneven frets are. So I'm just kind of pushing it backwards and forwards, and we take a stop. Now I can see straight away that we've got, it's cutting there and there, it's cutting everywhere, which means the neck is pretty flat. There's a low fret there, there's a low fret there, and that's probably what makes this one high. That's the interesting part. So where these are giving trouble, it's often because of a low fret, and there's a high one there which may also be difficult. So it's quite telling that when we imagine a fret is giving trouble because it's high, it can be precisely because the one before it is low, and there's a couple of low frets. So it's how it is that the low frets dictate what's possible in your playing action. Now there is something about this, I have to say. The angle on here, angle on here is very, very, very small, and I'm wondering if part of what Peter might not be getting on with might be the smallness of the break angle. I mean, it's presumably it's enough to be going with. I mean, that's what, 3 degrees. On paper that should be enough, but that note versus, nah, who knows. Looking at the strings, oh my lordy, they go vertically through the saddles here. That's something. I'm wondering if that's really vertical. I'm just listening to this and having a feel of this guitar. See, one of the things about doing this is that there's several things at play, and that they can affect the sound and the feel of the string playing in different ways. So, for example, I'm conscious that while we're doing this, I'm looking to level frets, which is what I intended to do, because I can see that we know that there's a low one in this mix and a couple of low ones, so that's going to be creating high spots effectively, which will have a limitation on how notes will play up here in this top part where those low frets are. And that one's still low, these two low, right? The other ones are cutting up fairly well and those are just low, so that's a limitation, and it could have some limits to the ultimate. 1.2 is as low as any guitar I will set, and this just may be these low frets here. Not too bad actually, playable. Okay, the other thing that's at play in this is the neck relief. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to carry on across this neck, leveling, and then when we get it low leveled, I'm going to just have another sort of feel, and then after that I may add in a tiny bit more relief, because again this is nicely preset, and because 0.15 is the sort of bottom end of the relief scale. It's heading towards being flat, which challenges, it puts an added challenge on the action you can have. So for example, 1.6 and 1.2 last fret action are more possible to play better with a bit more relief. If you have a low action and hardly any relief, that's a challenge for the strings to play. So I'm looking at the way it's cutting up, and it's showing me that's starting to cut a little bit, so that's low here, but now everything is cutting a little bit now, and that's starting to cut on there, whereas it's a little bit low on the outside edge, so maybe been just hammered in a bit hard or something. Also, the thing about playing technique is incredibly important. See how I'm making those play really cleanly? Clean, not so clean. Upward strokes clean. Downward strokes not so clean. Isn't that funny? Something in the way we play, and I often have a situation where I've got a neck levelled, and the customer gets it back, and then I see how they play, and they have a different style, and amazingly it can result in buzzes. Hello, Mrs. Eye Doctor.
I've got to phone the doctor.
Right. It's still hurting.
Yeah, I don't think this should be like this.
Okay, which are you going to phone the eye hospital?
There's an emergency number there.
Okay. I'll come in a second and see what they say. Okay, take a little break in a second. Claire went to have a cataract operation this morning, and they put anaesthetic in her eyes, but then they found that they hadn't got quite the right lens for replacing once they'd removed the cataract. So they did the right thing, which was to cancel and reschedule. There's a high one there and a couple of high ones there. They rescheduled, or they're going to reschedule. So she had an early start, or we had an early start, for nothing ostensibly, but okay, yeah, early start for nothing on paper. So I'm just gonna do this and then go in, and we'll see what happens. We might have to go down to the local village style hospital, or the town, our local small injuries thing. But it's been hurting since she got back, so the anaesthetic has left her in discomfort, which shouldn't be the case really. Okay. We're doing the best we can to make this play the best it can. Isn't that funny? Up, down. Right, going to write down where we got. Need to do the A and the E. Yeah, back in a bit. Okay, that's been a back and forth trip. I've levelled all these out, finished the other two, and now it is time to slack everything off, remove the strings, mask off the fingerboard, and polish it all out. And I've made a very slight adjustment to the truss rod as well, just because I think it's a bit flat on the neck side, but we shall see when we restring it. Now I've got to go out again in a minute, because my poor wife went for an eye operation which didn't happen, but then they put some anaesthetic in her eye and poked it, so she's actually got a torn cornea, no, bit on the front, and it's very painful. So I've got some that stuff, what do we call it? We call it eye drops, but she needs some antibiotics too. Okay, so I'm not going to, oh, that's a nice easy removal. I haven't seen this bridge before. Okay, you want to come out? Yeah, I mean, I'm not sure if these are worth keeping, because they go up to locking nuts, which means they're not usually long enough to do anything with. But I'll keep some just in case, but I ought to write the words locking nut on there. No, not locking nuts, locking tuners. Okay, so what I'm going to do is going to do the recrowning bit now, and then mask off, and then I'll do the polishing out offline. Now regarding the, it's not interesting. So this nut on here is hollow, and the height at which this is set, you can actually see it goes through to the hollow bit of the nut, which is crazy. So I have a tusk nut replacement, but I don't think on the it ain't broke, don't fix it principle. I'm not gonna, don't want to change it because I don't want to end up, we've got the height right, and I don't want to end up doing any damage to the surrounding slot. So it's a bit of a, I mean, price comes down a little bit because the nut doesn't get used, but we don't use a new tusk nut, but it's a kind of judgment call really. Some guitars I would take that nut out and replace it, but as I say, this one, it's about, does it play, and are the frets, are the strings at the right height now, which they are. I actually don't know what this original material is, but it is beautifully fitted, so I'm loath to dig it out. Okay, so here we have medium jumbo frets, I would suggest, and then we're going to round off any flattened parts of the fret, whilst leaving a thin line of black marker along the top of the fret, so that we know we've reprofiled it, but we haven't gone any lower. That's the important thing. And every now and then I'm just going to clean the pen out of the tool, because it does clog up with it eventually. So you can see that this is I'm using this tool very quickly, so there's hardly any frets that have been seriously levelled here. Very little, a little bit here on these couple, as we kind of remember, but it's very, this part tells you kind of how much work you've really done on the frets. And even if it looks like a lot, you'll actually see it for real when you come to use this tool or do the crowning part, because if we had done a lot of work, we'd be here quite some time rounding off a very flat fret, like a little bit more there. But all round, that's surprisingly little. Okay. Right, so that's the re-crowning or reprofiling done, and I'm going to want to mask everything off. So I'll do this offline as well, and come back when it's time to re-string. And when it comes to re-stringing, I'm going to put the new 10s on, and then once they're on, we'll get the tremolo. Hopefully it's the same gauge strings, so it should go right back to the same position, and we'll set it, we'll leave it in the position it's in. It shouldn't need resetting, but then we'll stretch out the strings so that they stay in tune, and then check the intonation. And I had a feeling that the intonation was off, but I can't be sure. Piece on here to make sure that corner's covered up. Right. And then I shall, once that's done, I shall go all the way back to town to get the prescription antibiotics. The funny part was my dad rang me. I was taking a break in the hammock earlier on in the sun, and my dad rang me, and he was trying to send my mum, his ex-wife, a birthday greeting, and my dad's had a stroke about 15 or more years ago, and he's not terribly with it most of the time. So finding his way around Facebook is just a bit too much at times. So he knew only that he'd written a message, but then it had sort of vanished and he didn't know what was happening. And of course I'm there asking him visual questions such as, now what can you see? And are the words you wrote in front of you? Yes, no. And anyway, by some sort of miracle we found out that he had managed to send a message intended to wish my mum a happy birthday, and end up sending it to one of my brothers, and it was kind of like, what was that for? So once I heard on the phone that that's where it had turned up, I was able to beg him to copy and paste it and send it to me, and I'll send it on to my mum a bit later on. But what a roundabout way. And very old people shouldn't be left alone on Facebook. That's absolutely no-go territory, really. Still. Okay, I'll see you when this is done. I'm just going to spend about 30 minutes polishing out the frets with various different grades of sandpaper, and also a load of, what's that stuff called, micro mesh, to make it really shiny and smooth. And after that it'll be ready to restring and intonate. So it's all good. And then the Chris's vintage V100, where I've had to finishing off, refinishing the back of the neck where I dented it like an idiot. Actually, I'll give myself a break. I wasn't to know that that had happened. But anyway, that's nearly finished too, so hopefully I'll have all these guitars done sometime tomorrow, ready to go back. Okay, see you in a bit. Okay, fret polishing done. I'm going to oil the board, and then we will put the strings on, and then stretch them, then check the intonation. So to summarise, precision fret levelled, adjusted 3 of the nut slots down, added a tiny bit more relief into the neck, polished the frets out, cleaned the fingerboard, oiled the fingerboard, fit new strings, stretch said strings, and check the intonation of said strings. So not a particularly unusual job compared to some of the things that have been through recently, but I'm hoping that it will have done made some positive difference. Let's see how well this works out. That goes in there, down to there, hangs on there, I believe. No, down the bottom. That's amazing. Let me just, oh no, of course, do you know what the vertical thing was that I was looking at? And I was getting worried about the angle of the strings. It's the, it's not the blasted, what's its Right, this is actually a little bit trickier now because of the way these strings go in. I'm going to have to do a little bit of a... Oh, right, we don't need too much through actually. So let's put it in and let's do the tiniest pull back. And a wind. So the reason I do a little bit of extra pullback is because if I don't, and if I need for some reason to take the strings off, if you don't give yourself that little bit of room, a little bit of extra string, typically on locking tuners, they crimp the string. So let's say you go all the way through, lock it off and tighten it up, and then you find, oh blast, I've got to slack the strings off for whatever reason. And you never know why you're going to have to do it until I put the wrong string in the wrong hole. Can you believe it? There you go. You have to take the string off for some reason. Luckily I didn't tighten that up too much. But yeah, if you're gonna have to take it out and put it back in for some reason, then you run the risk of it crimping and not being able to go through twice. Now we'll see very quickly with this one if that's caused any problem, but I think it will be alright. Yes, so that's why I recommend putting that extra bit on. And then you can snip it off like this and put the string on. That should be the E. So let's go through this way first. So anyway, I learned that the hard way. Having pulled it all the way through, thought, yay, lock it off, get away without wrapping anything around the post. Isn't this what it's all about? And then discovered I had to take the strings off, and as soon as I took one off, it won't pop. Anyway, it's alright, luckily I didn't crimp that one too far. I'll have a look, make sure it's okay, and if it looks like it's going to go pop, I'll replace it with another 10. So, what do I think of this guitar? The only thing I'm not sure about with this guitar, I mean, I'm impressed with the fact that it can sound quite like a 12 string, and the Les Paul humbucker sound was nice, even I'm not quite sure how true to humbucker it is. I'm not an expert in making judgments or comparisons like that, but I like the sound of it. It was pretty impressive. There were some tones in here that on my little amp as played, I found the bass notes quite muddy. They just seem to struggle with definition. That's just a very short tryout, and I'm sure that Peter will have either figured out if there are any that don't work for him live, and if they all do. So his take on it will be far more valuable than mine. Would I have one? I quite like the idea of having one for gigging. I think Peter made the point that it is the perfect covers band guitar, giving you everything you need without having to bother about gaps for guitar changes. So I quite like that aspect of it. Okay, let's get all this done. These are a tug to be sure they're on first and foremost. Groovy. So that wasn't okay. That wasn't seated all the way down. How strange. Okay. It's not catching. Why not? Oh, weird. Right, let's try this again. Could do without that as a live gig situation. So look, here's my extra bit of string I needed for just this purpose. Gonna get this down in here, hook it up, hook it. This doesn't want to hook on. How weird. Okay. Now, through here if I can, at an odd angle. Now I'm going to want to go all the way through to a non-crimped part, lock it off and do it up. So that's why it's handy to have that extra bit. Good, eh? So I'm just going to get some stretching into it now. Well, look at that. Who would have believed that stretching would do that? That's bizarre. Okay. That's pulled the thing off its little... Wow. Don't know my own strength. Flipped the thing off its thing. Okay. Right, let's get it tuned. Okay, so I'm going to bend some more strings between thumb and forefinger. Get as much of the slack out of here as possible. And then, once we get to just about stable tuning, then we can check the intonation and make sure that's on the mark. Okay, I'll do one more on the stretching, and then some bends, and then I'll be done stretching. And then it's back off down to the supermarket. Pick up a prescription. Let's look at the relief. Okay, that's a bit more than it was, but that's fine. Let's get the tuner. Let's get it running on the tuner and check the intonation. Right, okay. That's good. Behave. No, it's not behaving. Something's not right about this. It's not on anything, is it? No, it's off. It's off. Standard tuning, maybe? This isn't registering. What's wrong with this? Something weird going on here. Weird. Ah, you got a 40 jack socket, my friend. Do without that. Did you know that? Oh yikes! I don't really want to be doing this part of it, but we've got to, because you can't have a 40 jack socket. Okay, well I thought that was going to be the end of that. I wondered why it wasn't reacting to the tuning. It's because it was touching the wires, touching the cable, and it was cutting out, which shouldn't do that like that. So without it playing through, it's not going to intonate, so I'm just going to see if it's an easy fix on here. If it's some fancy unit that's different from anything I've ever seen, we're in trouble. Oh yes, thanks a big fat bunch. Ew. Of course it's not simple and straightforward. Ugh. Right, so just connecting. First of all, we check the solder. It's not very easy to see, but we can see. Okay, so the solder, the joint isn't fantastic, and it's on a printed board. So okay, let's put that on. Something is not happy. Now, with something in this shorting out on the inside. Now, it looks like all the solder joints are good on the jack socket, right? That's the first thing. And then what we've got is two little clip-on multi-wire things. We just get a close look at those before we put it all back in. I mean, it's not often that you're going to end up pushing the thing in this way, the way I did, by pressing on the jack, but if you do and it cuts out, it isn't brilliant, is it? So I wonder if that's something in here touching out, on grounding out on the, is it shielding paint on the inside of here? Don't know, but it worries me. Okay, well, I'm just going to have to live in hope that it's right. I mean, I could put some tape in to possibly just cover over all the printed circuits there to make sure that nothing touches them, but we'll have another look with this done up. So I'll do the intonation with it on the strap next, but it's just slightly worrying to have that touch out. But the whole panel does move because it's a big unit, and it pushes in quite tightly. So just one to watch out for, I think. I certainly was cutting out there on the tuner, which is what alerted me to why I wasn't getting a clear tuning signal. Do this up tight. Not good. It's not good, look at that. So going that way is touching out on something. This isn't good. And that's the problem. I don't have any means of knowing what's going wrong in here, but it's something definitely. You can hear that it's doing it. And I didn't notice it in the playing position, but I obviously noticed it touching against the ground, or bending the jack plug slightly, touching the tabletop. So it's coming, bottom swinging up this way. So my feeling is it's touching out on something in here. I bet we can't recreate it just here. Oh, we can. You know what? There is one possibility here. Let's suspect the cheap lead. I'm happy if that's the case, because it's going to be much simpler to put this right, in which case that goes straight in the bin, if this is the case. No, it's not the bloody lead. This is hanging off. This green wire here is hanging off. There's a green wire here, barely attached. It goes to there. And that looks dodgy. Shab. What are we going to do? Seriously. Right, there's two. Oh, look, there's a wire off here. That's what it is. There you go. That's two. Look at that. That little block. What? See that? It's come loose. But this is just the kind of ultra tiny soldering I don't like the look of. Right, well basically that has come proper undone. And the problem with this is that that is now soldered in. In fact, it's broken and it's soldered in. You can't actually unplug it. And there's one here that's unplugged as well. This green thing is just dangling by a single wire. It's worrying. Do you know, of all the things I didn't want to get anywhere near, and that was wiring for this damn thing. Look, there's absolutely no extension there. Oh, hideous. I don't even know I don't even know which one goes in which now. Absolutely horrible. That's absolutely horrible. Oh, bloody hell. What am I going to do with this? So these are, they're not even pull and plug kind of things. I don't think they are. Let's look at this up close. No, they are just soldered straight in. And you've got almost zero reach on those wires. I can't actually get into those. With the amount of wires that aren't available, have to be extended to get anywhere near touching I barely would even get in there to extend them. And then this is just hanging off. I mean, this is just awful. I don't know if you can see that. Look, just a single wire. It's a single wire on a 1-pin block going through to this ground here, but it's dangling off. It's literally gonna. It's probably the solder's already broken. This is junk. Why? Oh, why? So now I'm going to have to take some pictures to show Peter what I mean. I'm going to ask him if he's had any problems with this cutting out. But can I get a picture in there? Can I? Hell. There you go. That's the best bit. There's that, that's rubbish. And this thing hanging on. And if I'm not mistaken, this thing here doesn't quite literally doesn't have any it doesn't come undone, so I'd have to literally undo the solder on there, pull that out, undo the solder on that one, pull that one out, try and fix this back on here. God, honestly, this is just so unfair, and that's my fault for intonating the damn thing. Right, see you later when I've figured out how the hell I'm going to do this.